everyone. I wanted to go over a topic that a lot of my students have issues with, and a lot of students that I tutor. That topic is converting fractions into decimal. Before we even start going over converting fractions into decimals, I wanted to set a baseline to kind of let you know some definitions. First definition is, what is an integer? An integer is a whole number. So it's not a fraction. So in my examples, I have -3, -1, positive numbers, 1, 2, and 3, and 0 is an integer as well. Now fractions, those are part of a whole number. And the examples I have here are 2/7 or 2/7, 1/2, or 1/2, or 5/27. Now, with fractions, you have a numerator, which is the number on the top, and then you have a denominator, which is the number on the bottom. So for the 2/7, the numerator would be 2, and then the denominator will be 7. Now, if you decided to switch the numbers around, the numerator and the denominator around, that's called getting the reciprocal. So in my examples above, where I have 2/7, the reciprocal of that would be 7/2. And then for 5/27 or 5/27, that would be 27 over 5, or 27/5. All right, for our first example, we're going to convert a proper fraction into a decimal. Now, it's called a proper fraction because the numerator is smaller than the denominator. I do want to note one thing about converting fractions into decimals: regardless of which number is larger or which number is smaller, you're going to follow the same rules. And that rule is, when you convert this fraction into a decimal, you do division. And regardless of which number is larger or which number is smaller, the denominator always goes on the outside and the numerator goes on the inside. So once you set that up, you have to find out whether 7 can go into 2 evenly. It can't. So what you do is you add a 0, and when you add that first 0, you always put a decimal point right before that first 0 up here. And then you figure out, can 7 go into 20? It can. It can go into 20 2 times. And 7 times 2 is 14. And 20 minus 14 is 6. So whenever I tell my students, whenever you get a decimal, you always want to have at least 2 numbers after the decimal point. So we only have 1 number now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another 0, and we're going to bring that 0 down. I always draw the arrow just to kind of symbolize where that 0 down here comes from. You don't have to if you already know how to do it, but it just helps me do the math a little bit easier. So now you try to figure out, can 7 go into 60? Yes, it can go into 60. It can go into 60 8 times. And 8 times 7 is 56. So right here, we have 60 minus 56, it's 4. So like I said, you can keep going on and on, but the most important part is you get 2 integers, or 2 numbers after the decimal. So 2/7 is equal to 0.28. So let me go ahead and I'll just write my equal sign here. And let me get rid of that too. We don't need that anymore. So that equals 0.28. And it's actually 0.28. You might need to put that leading 0 in there. All right, so we're going to move on to the second proper fraction, which is 1 over 2. Again, regardless of which number is larger or which number is smaller, you follow the same rule. The denominator goes on the outside, the numerator goes on the inside. And then you just do your, your division. So can 2 go into 1? No, it can't. So you add that 0, and you put a decimal point right here, right before that 0 up here, and then you try to figure out, can 2 go into 10? Yes, it can. It can go into 10 5 times. So 5 times 2 equals 10. And 10 minus 10 equals 0. So 1 over 2 is equal to 0.5. And there's a point right here. We'll just put a 0 there. So 0.5 or 0.50. In the next example, we are going to convert an improper fraction into a decimal. Now, it's called an improper fraction because the denominator is smaller than the numerator. So you have 7 over 2 in this first example here, and then you have 12 over 7 in the second example. So we're going to start with the 7 over 2. Again, regardless of which number is larger, which number is smaller, you always follow the same rule. And that rule is you put the denominator on the outside and you put the numerator on the inside. And you just do your normal division. 2 can go into 7 3 times. And we know that 3 times 2 is 6. And then we subtract 6 from 7. So 7 minus 6 is 1. 2 cannot go into 1 evenly. So what we do, as we did in the previous example, we add a 0. And when we add that first 0, we have to put our decimal point up here. And we're going to bring that 0 down. That's a terrible arrow. Bring that 0 down. And 2 can go into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. And you do your subtraction. So 7 over 2 is equal to 3.5. So we will put our answer here. It equals 3.5. And let me get rid of that there. All right, so the next example we have is 7 over 2. Again, regardless of which number is larger, which number is smaller, the denominator always goes on the outside, the numerator goes on the inside. And then you just start doing your division. 7 can go into 12. Well, 7 can't go into 1. So you move to the next number. 7 goes into 12 one time. And 1 times 7 is 7. And 12 minus 7 is 5. Now 7 can't go into 5 evenly, so you add your 0. And when you add that first 0, you put your little decimal point up here. And you bring that 0 down. And 7 can go into 50 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. And 50 minus 49 is 1. And like I said before, you always want to get at least two numbers after the decimal point. So 7 can't go into 1 evenly. So we can add another 0. Bring that 0 down. And 7 goes into 10 one time. And you just put your 7 down here. You can do your subtraction. You can keep going on, and that'll equal 3. It's actually 3. I'll put 3 over here. So 12 over 7 is equal to 1.71. Our last example we're going to go over is converting a mixed fraction into a decimal. Now, a mixed fraction is where you have an integer mixed with a fraction. So in our first example, 1/2, the integer number is the number 1. The fraction is 2 over 7. And then we have 3 and 1 over 2, or 3/2. The 3 is the integer, and the 1/2 is the fraction. So first thing you need to do when you're converting a mixed fraction into a decimal is you need to turn that mixed fraction into an improper fraction. And to do that, you multiply the integer, or the whole number, times the denominator. So 1 times 7, that's equal to 7. And then you add the numerator. So plus 2, you get 9. Now this number here is going to be the numerator for our improper fraction. So we're going to have 9, and the denominator is going to be the same as the original denominator, which is 7. So now that we have our improper fraction, 9 over 7, we can just follow the same rules we followed in our previous examples, where we place the denominator on the outside, and we put the numerator on the inside. So regardless if it's a mixed number, if it's an improper fraction or a proper fraction, we follow the same rule. And that rule is to place the denominator on the outside of the division sign and the numerator on the inside. All right, and once we do that, we do our division. 7 can go into 9 one time, and we know that 1 times 7 is just 7. We subtract 9 minus 7, that gives us a 2. 7 cannot go into 2 evenly, so we add our 0. When we add that first 0, we have to make sure we put our decimal point up here. Doing a terrible job of drawing this decimal point. Let me redraw that decimal point. So I'm going to put it right there. All right, so we have our decimal point here. We bring that 0 down. 7 can go into 22 times, and we know that 2 times 7 is 14. 20 minus 14, is 6. And again, anytime you get a decimal, you always want to get at least two numbers after the decimal point. 7 can't go into 6 evenly, so we add another 0. Bring that 0 down. 7 can go into 60 8 times. And we know that 8 times 7 equals 56. And 60 minus 56 is 4. So we can keep going on and on. But again, you want to have at least 2 numbers after the decimal point. So 1 2/7 is equal to 1.28. So I'm going to write that number in there after I erase this. So that's equal to 1.28. All right, for our next example, we are going to first convert this mixed fraction into an improper fraction. And as we did in our previous example, first thing we do is we multiply our whole number times the denominator. So 3 times 2, that equals 6. And then we add the numerator, which is 1 plus 1. This will give us our numerator for our improper fraction. So we have 7, and the denominator is going to stay the same as the original denominator in the mixed fraction, and that's going to be 2. So our improper fraction is now 7 over 2, or 7/2. So now that we have our improper fraction, we can go ahead and follow the rules. Again, regardless of which number is larger or which number is smaller, the denominator always goes on the outside. You have your division sign, and then you put your numerator on the inside. And after you do that, you just start doing your division. 2 can go into 7 3 times, and 3 times 2 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. 2 cannot go into 1 evenly, so what we do is we add our 0, and when we add our first 0, we put the decimal point up here, bring that 0 down. That gives us 10. 2 can go into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 minus 10 equals 0. And you can stop at this point because 2 goes into 0 0 times. So this is equal to 3.5. So I will put that in there. So again, regardless of whether it's a proper fraction, improper fraction, or a mixed fraction, you follow the same rules after you get that fraction set up. You put the denominator on the outside of the division sign, and you put the numerator on the inside.